Hi, everyone. So it is 1:30, and we're going to get started with our August Mystic Society Salon. And I'm excited to welcome Alexis Pierce with us here today. We were just saying off camera that it's been almost a year since we first got to meet and connect at the Be Great conference. I had the great pleasure of getting to experience being in a room with your energy and also experiencing your message, Alexis. And since then, we had an interview as well. And I just feel really grateful and honored that you were able to join us this month for our little salon. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be part of this community for even an hour. It's fantastic. I've heard so much about it and know so many people who gain so much strength and wisdom from you. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a treat. Well, typically when we commence a salon, we start off with a gratitude. So I think I'd like to just take a moment, if you're open to, and just invite you to close your eyes if that feels good, or just come into your breath. Take a moment to notice where your roots are, those roots that connect you energetically to the earth. Maybe just give them a little pulse of gratitude for the way in which they connect us and support us, provide for us, whether we're paying attention to them or not. And then notice also that you have this etheric root system that kind of mirrors that earthly root system. Maybe give it a little pulse of gratitude as well, bringing our gratitude and thanks up into the ethers and the heavens and the realm beyond even our human comprehension. Giving our gratitude and thanks for the ways in which we are held and inspired and provided for in those ways as well. And I'd love to call your attention to the directions and bring our awareness to the ways in which we are held at this center point on the compass of the directions of our lives, with gratitude to the east in the direction of new beginnings and potential and possibility, and the south in the direction of that beautiful summer sun coming in through the window right now, that life force energy and that fun and that play. To the west in the direction of those who have walked before us and the mentorship and the guides. We are here today with Alexis, who's a powerful teacher and guide, and I have so much gratitude for that west energy. And then, of course, to the north in the direction of the inner call and the drum beat. And this call this month is very much about identifying that inner calling. And when we think about success in your why, of course, we're pulsing into what that really means for you and what your own authentic alignment to those topics are. And then from this place, we extend a blanket of gratitude in all directions for all things spoken and not spoken. Maybe a few things pop into your mind or into your awareness. And we'll wrap that blanket of gratitude around all of us, those who join us live and also those who are coming into the portal and watching this replay later, so that we can be together for the purpose of this call with our most upright minds and our peacemaker hearts and our owl eyes to see things in new ways and our dear ears to maybe hear things in new ways. And together can be in alignment for the highest good of not only ourselves, but our collective and truly all of creation. And so it is. And I welcome you. Yeah, and here's our friend Sarah too. Hi, sister friend. Well, Alexis, would you be open to me turning it over to you to introduce yourself? You have such a beautiful story of how you came to be on the journey and the walk that you're on, and how you came to be doing the work that you're doing as an influencer and inspirer and entrepreneur. Would you be open to introducing yourself? Great.
Of course. This is actually the hardest talk we ever give, right? We skip the important parts and give the highlights, and they're never the right highlights. So in short, we'll start now. So now I teach yoga, I teach meditation, I teach mindfulness, but I'm also a strategist by training. And those things to me are all the same thing, because yogis and strategists have a couple things in common. We don't like to waste effort in any way. So we're really into efficiency, and we're because of that, we're really into getting to the point, to like get to the point of things. And so before this current incarnation, focusing on helping people with their life purpose and helping people strategize their businesses and how they align with their purpose, I worked for the U.S. government in strategic planning, and we did like crisis response planning, crisis recovery planning on the scale of like Afghanistan, not in the scale of a small town or something like that. The big complex crises. And we created a framework that I've adapted to work with individuals to help people get really clear on like all those moving pieces in life, right? Like we think like, oh, well, I want to do this and I have this skill and I'm also really great at this over here. But what about that secret talent that I never told anybody about? You know, all of those different moving pieces are just as complex as helping Afghanistan stabilize. So we come up with what is the overarching message? What's the theme that's running through all of that on a deeper emotional level that we're really playing out here in our life? So in all of those different aspects that we show up, we can feel intentional and purposeful. Yeah. So that's the short story of what I do.
Well, I love it. I mean, this crowd is very accustomed to the intersection of, you know, that modern mysticism, that new paradigm way of looking at business and life. And I love that you are so willing to bring right out into the forefront, into even the 1 minute version of how you got onto this path, the very real, practical, tactical, strategic side of who you are and what you do in your experience with the intersection of the mindfulness and the awareness of the now, and how these themes are complex, whether we're talking about them on a global scale and an international scale, or whether they're in our inner landscape.
Yeah. So my main thread, one of the ways I like to think about it is if all of the different aspects of your life are beads on a necklace, then what's the central thread running through it? And for me, that central thread is peace. And that peace has shown up as literally working on issues of peacekeeping, but it's also shown up as literally working on issues of inner peace in the meditation and the yogic world. So I can see how these different aspects, even though they might not seem related to other people, for me are quite related with this theme of peace. But one of the things that takes people out of peace and starts to rock people's boats and feel frustrating and stressful is this, oh wait, my mind went so fast I lost it. Where'd it go? Come back. It's like a rope. Hold on, pull it back. Pull it back. Oh wait, hold on. It'll come back. Interesting.
That's okay.
Be present for that. That was really interesting in the middle of a sentence.
Well, I was just thinking, as I see Sarah's face and I see Lynn's face, that analogy of the central cord running through it and the beads really shows up, especially with each of you. It's this clear awareness of what is that. And I like the idea too that it ties into right livelihood, where we talk about, well, what is your soul purpose and path? How does that connect to your sacred commerce? How does that then influence your leadership? That thing of your soul purpose and path doesn't tend to come out of left field. That piece to me feels like the piece that you can identify throughout your life, that central cord, that thing that for you mentioned peace.
Yeah. Thank you. Bringing me back. Here we go.
No problem.
So one of the things that I feel like people get frustrated with, and what I see from my view, because my special talent is seeing the big picture in all of these areas, is that when we're in that space of, I don't like this, so I'm frustrated by a lack of clarity, I'm frustrated by a lack of progress, I'm frustrated by feeling big yet living small. Like when we're in that moment of pain, it's very hard to take ourselves beyond the current, like the immediate solution.
Right.
So one of the things that the strategy is very helpful with, or this big visioning piece that I work on, is that it takes us out of the current moment and takes us to that much bigger level. Like Afghanistan's a great example. If we're in the moment of, we're in the middle of a war, things aren't working, we can't create a solution from that place, because all we can see is, well, we need trash and we need this and it's this person's fault, and we move, we get really caught up in the actual issue of the day instead of the vision of the future, or the vision of what could be. So it's a big step. It's a big step to say, I've got all these different beads. What's the thread going through it? It's a big step to see the thread.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the important work.
Yeah. So how did you make that transition from being the big picture strategist, being a very traditional, also patriarchal, male-dominated field, and moving into your right livelihood of acknowledging that your central cord was about peace and that you could bring this work forward in a way that was more aligned to who you are and the way you wanted to live and your own bigger picture of your why?
It's really interesting, because what came up for me was, well, I was in my right livelihood and now I'm in my right livelihood. Like they're all right livelihoods in the moment for me. And because I'm not in this community all the time, maybe I have a different meaning of the words, but I feel like at each moment it's been the right thing, because it was the full expression of what I needed to learn at that moment. And we couldn't move from one to the other without it, right? Like,
absolutely. Was that a tricky transition for you, or was that a real natural progression?
well, I took a couple years off in the interim.
Mm-hmm.
When I decided to leave the government, what replaced, so I had this big vision. When I was 11 years old, I puffy painted this canvas bag about the Somali war. Hi, about the Somali war. And, who are we really killing? Like, I was really into issues of war and peace from a very, very young age. So I knew what I wanted to do. And I went to a Unitarian Universalist church, which was a really beautifully eye-opening experience growing up as a teenager.
Yeah.
And the minister at that church said to me one day, she goes, that woman in the crowd, in the audience, whatever we called it, who every Sunday says, save the dolphins, and then it's save the whales, and then it's save the children, and then it's save this. She goes, you just got to pick something, because nobody respects that woman. We just roll our eyes at her. So I thought, okay, I'm going to pick something. And so I visualized myself as a mom and my teenager coming in to ask me, well, what did you do to change the world? And at the moment I thought, well, gosh, all I'm doing is turning off light switches. Like, is that really enough? Like, what do I want to say here? And so I chose this concept of violence as something I wanted to work on. So that path was really clearly laid out, and it was culminating in this beautiful time in the government. And I thought that time would be endless, like a lifetime's worth. And then it wasn't. I did everything I ever wanted to do in 4 years. Wow. So what do you do when your entire life purpose has been fulfilled in the way that you interpreted your purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I got depressed, like you would do. You get confused, you get lost, you read self-help books, you talk to people, you take long walks, you look at grand adventures. I still want to bike from Alaska to Argentina. You start to reach out, like, how can I fill this gaping hole?
Yeah.
And so when I decided to quit my job, it was quitting to prepare, but I didn't know what I was preparing for. I just knew that I had to prepare in some way. And some of that preparation was healing. Some of it was growing. Some of it was allowing myself to even have desire, because the fact that I didn't know what was coming next was a pretty clear sign that I wasn't listening or wasn't able to hear what I wanted, or allowing myself to express what I wanted. So I literally quit my job just to prepare.
Beautiful.
And that's what I told people. And the hardest part of it was managing other people's fears, because people couldn't cope with that very well.
Yeah.
It wasn't another job. It was insecure. It didn't have health insurance. It's all those things that people didn't really understand how to deal with, especially in a shaky economy.
Right.
And a job you couldn't be fired from for the rest of your life. That was a hard thing for people to understand why I'd leave. So I moved to New Zealand for 2 years, and I lived on a mountain and prepared, which was really fun. But while I was there, I noticed that there's a couple things that I can't stop myself from talking about. Like, I can't stop myself from helping friends who have businesses get clear on their vision, so that they stop just getting stuck in the day-to-day and actually achieve what they want to achieve. I was working for a yoga studio, and we were just talking one day about what was going on in his business and what he actually wanted in his life, the owner of the studio. And he was so off course that I just couldn't sort of help myself from interjecting. And it was the same thing with some other friends. So I ended up doing some small business strategic planning there, but for people who ran their own businesses, like one person, maybe a couple employees, but not much bigger, knowing that I wanted to move into the self-empowerment realm. And then when I came back to the States, it was with the deliberate intention to start doing that. Thanks. Yeah. It was both unfolding and deliberate, right? Like, we have to create the deliberate space to unfold.
Yeah. Do you think you said that you were letting people know that you were preparing for what I would then, with the microscope dial back, say was a transition to a new phase of your right livelihood. Did you know you were, we also, in the Mystics, we talk a lot about this concept of the pause. And you just gave one of the most beautiful, I think, descriptions of what the magic of what the pause can hold, when you said part of it was healing, part of it was growing, part of it was preparing. Do you think you had the awareness that that's really what you're doing in the moment? Or was it the leap of faith of being in the discomfort of the pause? How did you actually experience that phase?
Probably a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
There was definitely a lot of frustration of, why am I here? Why isn't there clarity? Why don't I have words for what's next? How can I possibly have skills and talents and not be able to feel like I'm able to energetically pour them into something? Like, how can I be water with no cup?
Mm-hmm.
That was a big part of it. But there was also a very conscious and deliberate presence around preparing.
Yep.
So a lot of very deliberate work and a lot of like testing things out. So there's one day in particular that that I think will stick with me for the rest of my life, where I'd been living on this mountain. It was winter in New Zealand. And I'd been alone for a long time, other than the dogs that I had. And I was so over it. Like, I was so over my mind trying to figure out what I was supposed to do with all of this. And, burning through money, because New Zealand's expensive, even if you're living on somebody else's mountain. Mm-hmm. And I left the house one day to go grocery shopping, which was an hour away and up over a mountain. And as I left the house, I'd literally had it. I just had it. And I'd never really had what I would call a personal relationship with God or source or whatever you call it. But for whatever reason at that moment, I decided that I did. And I think I'd been reading the Artist's Way. So there was a lot about like creativity, right? So I was like, all right. And as I was locking the door, I was like, this is it. I surrender. If there's something you want me to do, let me know. And I got in the car and I drove down the hill, down the mountain. And I had to drop these magazines off at a friend's house on the way before I went to the grocery store, which again was an hour away. So I pulled into my friend's driveway where I hadn't been before, knocked on the door. This woman runs past the door, who's not my friend, opens it up and is like, thank God you're here. And I was like, okay. And so I follow her because she just runs away, and I follow her. Her pipes had exploded in her bathroom. Her house was flooding. She was probably in her 80s, completely incapable of dealing with it. And we couldn't find the shutoff valve. So I'm looking around. I renovated my own house, so I was used to this sort of stuff. So I'm looking around for the shutoff valves, can't find them. So I'm just holding the pipes, literally with my hands and some towels, trying to stop the house from flooding. While she calls their version of 911. And finally the firemen get there, and it turns out the shutoff valves are like half a mile away on the road and blah, blah, blah. And we look at each other and I go, well, you're not my friend. And she looks at me and she goes, well, you're not the physical therapist. Who are you? And she just lets him rip. She thought I was somebody totally else. We had no time to talk about it. And then my friend apparently lived next door and came over and said, what are you doing here at my neighbor's house? And I was like, apparently surrendering.
Yeah.
And that moment was both incredibly powerful because of the immediacy of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I asked and I was immediately useful. But then the next thought was terrifying, because if that works so well, how do you live a life like that? What are you, just Superman? You just go from crisis to crisis? Like, you just surrender until you show up where you're needed? Like, how do you make money doing that? And so there was both an expansion and a contraction at the same time. And then the rest of the sort of years since then have been like actively navigating that process. Like, well, once you know that potential's there, are you willing to live it or not?
Yeah.
It's been a really interesting exploration for me to say, well, I'm only willing to live it to such an extent. I'm only willing to live it through the parameters of how I want it to be, or through, this container that I think is acceptable for my life. But full surrender, I don't know about that. That was crazy, right?
Yep.
So that's, I think, again, where I try to ground myself in the visioning piece, because the more I can attach to a vision, an emotionally based vision, a soul-based vision, so above the individual. So not, I want to live in Malibu with a nice fence, but what's my soul actually trying to accomplish here? The more I can allow myself to feel like that's my rooting or that's my tether, then the more I can allow myself to float.
Nice.
So I really like the untethered, tethered concept, because in order to be untethered, or in order to rise, what's that grounding cord there?
So we're getting to kind of the meat of the topic of this salon, which is this idea of what is success, or success in your why. And what I'm hearing you kind of lean into is twofold. One, having a picture of your idea of success is partially the vision that you described of where you want to go. And you mentioned the big picture, or you mentioned, the thread that weaves through the beads, like the sense of what is the context or the cup that makes all of this water make sense. And then the other is, how do you want to experience that? How do you want to curate the experience so that it is in alignment with your desire, within these parameters, you call it. And now you help people do that. And you have a unique skill set, not just vis-a-vis your background, but the ability to both see the thread and identify the thread for yourself and for others, but then also to be a strategist and know what steps will get you closer to this vision or this idea of success. Tell me about how all those pieces fit together in your world. And if my vocabulary is different than yours, please bring this along in the way that you see these terms.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I love the way that you phrased all that. So some of the concepts that I'm working with right now and how I'm languaging them, one of them is this difference between purpose and meaning. So all of us have a purpose, right? At least the way that I look at it, we have a purpose. And I'm going to attach that purpose to what I call your soul's vision. So same thing, but the purpose would be sort of the action steps or the specific thing that you're working on an individual soul level. And so we're up here at this level. So like soul's vision, soul's purpose, and then we come down a level and now we're in the individual. So great, my soul's working out all this stuff as an individual soul. Mm-hmm. But then what, I'm in a human form. So what's all that? And so what I realized is a lot of people say, well, I want to know my purpose. But what they're really saying is I want to feel like my day-to-day life has meaning.
Right.
And I'm not sure those are the same things. And what I help people do is connect the dots between those two things. So if we're talking about feeling like my career is meaningful, my work is meaningful, then what we're really talking about is that I'm able to feel the ways that feel like my purpose.
Yes. And
so we need to, at least in the strategic framework that I work in, we get really clear on both how you want to feel. So coming down from your soul's purpose to you as an individual, how do you want to feel? This is Danielle Laporte's body of work, right? Like, how do you most want to feel in your life on a big level? And then look across your memories and say, what are the times that I felt those ways? Mm-hmm. It's probably a very small number of memories, like 2 or 3 max, usually, that we've actually felt all of the ways we want to feel in our lives. And then the strategic work is to look across those memories and come up with some of the common elements. So I'll give you an example. I want to feel content. I want to feel peaceful. I want to feel quiet. I want to feel alivened and embodied, connected. And for me, untethered is a big one. So the couple times in my life where I've felt my happiest, if we'll use happy to capture all of those feelings, my best, are swimming underwater, coaching a friend who was learning how to play ultimate frisbee, running next to a woman who was trying to reach a running goal, being in this really small book club with a couple of other women, and just one particular night of that book club, like laughing and talking about things, and it was also a potluck. And then the way that I feel after yoga or meditation, not during, but after, and then being in the woods. Mm-hmm. So you might look at those examples and go, yeah, there's nothing in common there. But for me, there's a stillness that underlies a lot of that. There's an intentionality, like we've done something deliberately, or we're in the process of doing something that's goal-oriented. There's a small, like a intimacy to it. So we're talking about one person up to a group of 6 people. So I'm looking at those common elements and then thinking, if I want my life to feel purposeful, because these are the ways that I want to feel and feel meaningful, then these elements need to be in my life. So to be happy on a day-to-day basis, how can I build a life that includes intimate moments with 1 to small groups of people? How can I build my life that includes moments of stillness?
Totally.
Maybe that's directly, swimming underwater is one of my moments. Great, let's swim underwater. Like, it can be that obvious, or it can be something more like, well, then in my business where I'm going to spend, 12 hours of my day, every day, either thinking about or actively working in, how is stillness showing up? How is intentionality and leading towards a goal showing up? How is connecting with somebody in an intimate space and helping them feel that ability to succeed showing up? So for me, coaching became an obvious choice. Mm-hmm. And coaching in this particular kind of realm, like online and all of that, because that's a direct and deliberate way to make my life feel meaningful every day.
Yeah.
But for some people, it'll show, they may have all of their happy moments are them being alone, but in crowds. It's like, right. Okay, that's interesting. So then maybe we're looking at something like get an office in one of those co-working spaces and go to conferences, because that's what you're going to feel charged and rejuvenated by. So we start to build in these really, these elements that make sure that you feel the most alive and purposeful for you. So these daily actions that we take are where sort of the rubber meets the road. And we have to see, like, are we connecting the dots between this big purpose and vision and the way that we live our lives?
Yeah, absolutely. So you use the word happiest, and you kind of put your hands around all those other words and the ways you wanted to feel to describe happy. And I remember after encountering Danielle's work myself, I was struggling with that bucketing of things around this. What does all that add up to? Is that happiest? Is that purposeful? Is that meaningful? And I see you connecting the dots between those words as well. 2 years ago, I pulled into it this word of feeling realized, which somehow to me was a word that described being aligned to those ways that I wanted to feel, or feeling aligned to that continuum of the soul's expression to the individual expression. How does that word play into your world? Does it have a role in this family of words like purpose and meaning and
the word realized?
Yeah, feeling realized.
Yeah, I really love that. I want to think more about that, actually. I think perhaps let me add this one additional piece, because this is really the crux of the work that I do, is that, so when we take all those individual feelings, that for me is an expression of what do I want on sort of an ego-based level? Like, I'm living this life on a day-to-day material level. So what do I want? But above that, the way that I view purpose is as an emotional spectrum. So a purpose isn't a career path. It's not like one thing that shows up, but it's the spectrum of feeling. But there's two words attached to that spectrum, the light word and the shadow word. Not that I believe in those concepts, but they're really good for talking about, right? Sure. So for you, it may be that actually being realized versus being, I'm not sure what the opposite of realized, but untapped, the purpose spectrum that you're on. And so all of that common thread running through your beads is a thread about realization versus untapped.
Interesting.
Whereas for me, that thread is peace on one end and conflict on the other, though in this emotional spectrum, those show up for me as feeling enough and feeling not enough, enoughness and not enoughness. So I would think that I'd put realization on the same level as purpose, because it's that type of emotional interplay.
I love it. I love that description. I also love how you were able to kind of show two different, of the cords or the threads weaving through the necklaces with yours and mine side by side. And I think it also gets back to, your response to my question when I said, this thing of your right livelihood then or now. And you said, I feel like I was at both places. That feeling realized was present for you in each of those moments.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I was working out being enough, right? I was working out the peace aspect of things. And so that's the other thing I really like about this concept of purpose as an emotional spectrum, is that means that all of the awful things, like that horrible first marriage and that time your parents used to beat you and all of those awful things that have happened to us, those are actually purposeful too. They're just on the shadow end of the spectrum. So we're never sort of escaping from that emotional range. We're just exploring the depths of it. And a lot of people say, well, then how can I be useful, right? Because that means the area of my biggest insecurity is the area that I also have the biggest potential. Right. It's like, yeah, fair enough, which is your total hot mess inside, but other people are picking up on the brilliance of it outside. And I think of it like, I try to explain it like a map. Like, so if all of us are little lands on a map, I've never really played Risk, but I imagine it's like this. Like, you've got your own little land on a map and somebody stumbles into your land and they're going, oh my gosh, where am I? Like, I do not recognize this. I don't know what I'm doing here. It's very dark. I don't know why I'm here. And you just walk up and you're like, oh no, I got this. This is insecurity. This is insecurity land. I know every hill. I know every valley. I've been through it all. Let me help you get out of it. And that's where we can really bring our businesses into it, because at the core of any business issue or at the core of any service that we're providing, we're helping with that some type of deeper emotional issue, right?
Yep.
So if we're clear on what that emotional issue is that we're helping people with, we can see how it's the symptoms of its absence are showing up for people in the specific areas that we work on.
Yep.
And then we can feel confident that we know how to address those symptoms, at least on the emotional level, because man, have we been there.
Right. Absolutely.
And it's going to allow us to keep growing, because we're not going to keep growing in an area that we're growing out of, right?
Yeah.
So we may discover new heights of it, but we may also discover new lows of it, or we take it into a different context. But we're going to continue to work on this emotional spectrum, because that's the one that our soul is working out.
Love it. I love it. Yeah. So, okay. So I know people in the mystics are very comfortable with this idea of identifying their own authentic definition of success. And I know that they are also very comfortable with the awareness of the intersection of their soul purpose and path with that definition of success. One of the things that I notice, especially with world changers and healers and influencers, is they continually move their own bar of success along. And I'm curious about your thoughts about that phenomenon, the ability to either continue to motivate the self by moving that bar, but then also the absence then of that feeling of being realized, of celebrating the integration of success of, I have arrived at a goal point, and yes, now it's okay for me to look forward. Does that land? Or
Yeah. I think one of my taglines is woman who is hard on herself. So it resonates very strongly. Mm-hmm. It's something people notice about me right away. They're like, wow, you're really hard on yourself. Mm-hmm. So this is something, a space I'm actively in. And it's interesting. I'm leading two mastermind groups right now, and they're locally based mastermind groups for women in a network marketing business. And the work that we're doing was supposed to be, let's discover our purpose and then translate it to the business message, because that's the work I do in coaching. But the work we're actually doing is, let's figure out our purpose. Let's discover how we want to feel. And then let's practice allowing ourselves to feel those ways. So yeah, it's so big, because that's the shift that makes the difference, right? Mm-hmm. The rest of it flows easily once we've allowed ourselves to be in that space. But the resistance that comes up to feeling like you've already won is so great and so grand. And I don't remember who suggested that I try feeling that way. Mm-hmm. Dina Welch, but like, feel like you've already won. Feel like you're already there. Mm-hmm. And what I love about that is we feel that, we embody that, and then all of a sudden there's the constriction,
right?
That comes in, and the words attached to that constriction are the interesting thing to me, because that's the gap between where we want to be and where we are.
Okay.
Because we can jump ahead, because we can feel it right now. I can say, well, this is where I want to be. Great. Let me pretend right now. Let me visualize whatever words we want to use for it. Let me be in that space right now. But just like when you're learning meditation, you can be in a state of meditation instantly. It's always available to you. But that doesn't mean you can maintain it once you get there. So we go from A to Z, step by step, through all the letters, because that's how we learn to maintain something. That's how we get that comfort level. That's how we clear up all the things that show up in the way. But it's there already. So one of the ways to pull out the issues, pull out the sort of the highlight reel of the things we want to work on, the challenges that we want to work on, is to actually take ourselves all the way to Z and see where the hiccups are in between. So let me try that together to moving the goalposts. So a lot of times when we're here now and we're looking forward, then we say, okay, I achieved that, but now I want to achieve this. Or yeah, now I'm here, but I was supposed to be there. So that's that feeling, right? Of I'm always falling short of where I should be, because I can feel inside that I'm meant for something much bigger. And the externalities of my life are always falling short of what my soul knows is possible. And that's a painful feeling. That's really painful. And it's depressing. And it's demoralizing. So one of the things about vision-based planning is that instead of being goal-driven, it's goal-derivative. I'm not sure those are the exact words that I want to say.
Gave me chills.
Yeah, but let me explain it. So from here, we're looking forward. But what vision-based planning does is it jumps us to Z and then looks backwards.
Okay.
So we jump to the vision, and then we say, great, now here I am. What did I do to get here? And one of the, from just a purely strategic view, we look at the necessary and sufficient components to achieve something.
Okay.
So that means that everything that you do has to be necessary. Otherwise, you're wasting effort. Again, yogis and strategists don't like wasted effort. And that everything also has to be sufficient altogether in order to achieve the goal. So if you want to lose weight, maybe that your big vision, or your vision is your vision of the world, your soul's vision is like this beautifully healthy world where everybody feels fully embodied and is able to move freely in the world. And you're like, great, I'm going to embody that now by being the healthiest version of myself. And so you go to the gym and you have a great community and you do a lot of mindset work, but you haven't bothered to consider your diet. Like, then we're not necessary and sufficient, right? We're missing something huge, and all of these other things aren't going to get us there because we have an interesting relationship with food. Yeah, we have a blind spot. Mm-hmm. So no amount of looking from where we are now going forward would point that out for us necessarily. Mm-hmm. But as soon as we get to the end result and look backwards, it's really clear that something huge was missing. So where this shows up for people is they're like, oh, okay, I've got this goal. I want to have a business with 10,000 followers. They're like, all right, I'll get MailChimp. It's like, wait, what? Like, we just made a tactical decision down here about a goal that's up here, unrelated entirely to an intention that's way up here. Mm-hmm. So we got it. So it's powerful to go to the emotion-based place and say, from that position of I've already won, from that feeling of I'm already exactly who I want to be. I already feel, and it's possible for me to feel all the things I want to feel. And I know that because I'm living them, even if it's living the shadow side, I am all of that I'm meant to be already. Then what would be the next way to express that?
Nice.
What would be the area of life that needs focus? Because sometimes the business actually doesn't need the work. It's our personal life. It's our connection to source. It's our connection to community. And that's where we get the bang for the buck that brings the necessary and sufficient together to get us towards the vision and the intention.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So reverse planning, basically.
Love
Vision-based planning instead of pushing yourself.
But did you say it initially? You said derivative, vision derivative. I love that.
Yeah, because we've got to come down from the goals instead of pushing towards the goals.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me how the concept of why fits into this, because on the one hand, it can become a tricky dance. Initially, I'm thinking of you saying in the moment, why am I doing this? And why, there's a why behind why you were turning off light switches. There's a why behind why you felt like that wasn't sufficient to your soul purpose and you kept moving forward into a broader scale. There's also a why that continues to add, those pearls or gemstones on the necklace. It has to do with that expression or intersection. In the mystic world, we call it co-creation between the soul and the individual level. Tell me how does why and your reason for doing, or the raison d'être, feed into this picture?
Okay. I was actually hoping you wouldn't ask me this question, but it's good. I'm caught up.
Well, this is
earlier. I was like, oh.
Let's co-create on this one, because it's when the experts who contribute to this month's topic in the portal are also come back and go, I get the success piece. What do you mean by why? So it comes up on that level. It also comes up on the level of, as healers and intuitives and world changers, there is this ongoing theme that I see in the community and in private clients of part of my why just knows that I need to embody peace in myself. And I can do that out in nature just fine. So why is it that I feel like I need to keep showing up and building a social media platform? And like, how do I reconcile this something within me that tells me my why is both that the being peaceful on the mountain is just as important as my resiliency and willingness to show up in the world and make change, even though it can be uncomfortable.
Yeah. This actually came up last night in the mastermind. A woman was crying very vulnerably and said, when I feel content, I don't care about my business anymore. So I'm afraid that the better I feel, the less I'll care. And what if I don't do it? And that was really powerful, because I think all of us feel that fear, right? Like we're in some way living our life based on stress. Right. Or that adrenaline rush of like, I have to do this because I've bought into the system, and the system is based on money, which means I then have to show up in that way and run a business like this. And even though I say that I'm choosing it, am I really choosing it? Because I'm pretty sure I would just peace out if I didn't have to.
Totally.
So that fear is always running through our heads. And what that fear does is it gives us that small seed of I'm a phony, because we know we might not choose this if the system wasn't like that.
Interesting.
So when it comes to why, I translate why as the soul's vision. So my perception or concept is that all of us are human, right? And so like, we're just like grass everywhere. So grass has a purpose. What's the human purpose? I'm going to say, just for sake of argument, it's to love and be loved. Great. But then each individual blade of grass, like, well, why is that there? So why is an individual human here? And it's like, okay, well then my soul must be trying to work something out. My soul must be here to express something. And so when we tap into that vision, we can create a clear picture in words of what your soul sees. And I suggest that because all of us have been in a situation where something has happened on the news, or you hear a story and you're like, that's not fair. That's not the way life has to be, because your soul just hit up against reality. And so we want to get clear on what is your soul in particular trying to articulate here in its way of being in the world. And so most of our soul's visions, when we start to speak them, look really similar. You know, life as people are peaceful, people are connected, people feel empowered, people support each other. Like, they have these common elements, but they're ranking and stacking with each other. The priorities are different, and the things that then means are different. So we could have a world where people feel completely confident in and of themselves. They know that they are 100% okay. And in my world, that means that they can then support other people fully and not take from them. That's the peace part, right? There's no taking from them. And in your world, it could be that then they're able to co-create and express and take things out. So same core, but it means two different things in the way that it plays out. And so the why for me is a big, big why. Like, that's the emotional impetus, that's that thread running through, that's continually pushing you to explore these issues in all these different areas, because on a subconscious level, your soul's trying to create that world. It may be doing it poorly, it may be doing it sloppily, but it's trying to create that world somehow. And the cool thing is when we get clear on what that world is that your soul is trying to create, and the emotional spectrum that is your purpose playing out, then we can choose the best ways to try to achieve it right now. Yeah. And then we can say, oh, okay, yeah, I'm choosing to spend my time on this business, which may exist in this sort of fake world over here that I'm not entirely sure I buy into, but it's the best possible outlet for the world that I'm trying to create right now, because I can directly tie it. Or it may be like, no, I work for a nonprofit because that is the most obvious way for me to achieve that right now. Or it's, I'm sorry, I just checked out to live in a monastery because that's the best way that I can achieve it right now. Yeah. So we can, I'm going to use the same words over and over again here, but we deliberately choose the expression and the outlet for that much, much bigger vision.
Yeah. Well, no, I think deliberately choosing it's important to make that distinction, because we hear people talk a lot about their recurring patterns that lead them to feel disconnected from their why, and money. I'm glad you brought money into the why conversation, because it's one of the biggest levers the universe uses to motivate us. You have to pay your mortgage. Let's go figure out how we're going to make some money. Health and love being two other ones. You know, these are the things that bring us closer to our why and our soul's purpose. And so if the universe is taking the reins and it's showing you these recurring patterns across any of those three levels, money, love, or health, it leads you to that place that, you know, I think you said earlier, the feeling of being fed up, that place where you can surrender and release enough to say, okay, how will I manifest this alignment to my soul's purpose without having to be motivated by these external whys of money or health or, you know, heartbreak or whatever it might be. So I'm really glad you brought that in. I still feel like, you know, I think it surfaces as the hard question for experts and myself, and possibly even for you, because it has to do with this going deeper into the soul's vision, deeper into on what level are we talking about? I love your hierarchy from soul to individual for that reason too, because I think we could hold the why up to those levels as well. I'm just throwing a lot of words out there, but
yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons that question, it doesn't bother me, but it's like that feeling of like, oh, there it is again, because nobody likes the answer, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I work on purpose, and people are like, great, what's my purpose? And I'm like, it's not to be a nurse. And they're like, oh, you know, that's what they wanted. That's what they want. They're like, just tell me what to do. People want to do things because that's where creation shows up, right? We get to take energy and put it out.
Right.
And so that uncomfortable phase of having to go inwards is like, oh man, that's hard. I don't want to do that. But we can look at the why on a couple different levels, because I think all of our actions are motivated by our soul's vision. At least that's what I believe now from my experience. But then there's still this human piece, right? And so there's okay, I have these different ways that I want to feel. So a lot of my perhaps lesser habits may be me trying in unskillful ways to get at feeling those ways. So maybe I am manipulate, or maybe I, change my life a little bit, or maybe I come up with excuses and call in sick because I'm trying to feel those ways, even if I'm not doing it skillfully. So there are different levels of why, but sure, most of them are these emotion-based reasons.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to give Sarah and Lynn and Leon a chance to ask you a question if they would like. And
sure.
If not, I have a question back for them. Either of you have a question you want to bring forward for Alexis here? We have her with us live. Let's see. I'm thinking Sarah just came off of I Stand for Love Day and her big why. And Sarah, I hope you don't mind me putting you on the spot, but you in the Mystic Society said, just click on the hashtag. And I hadn't actually done that. I'd seen it, follow me in some ways and myself follow it, but I hadn't actually intentionally jumped into the portal of the hashtag itself. And what an incredible prism you created of love.
Yeah, I'm just absorbing everything you're saying, because I'm in the process right now of receiving and being in the impact, which yesterday was my total intention, was just like, look at this, look at everything that's there. Don't look at what's not there. Look at everything that's there and just wow. And then I'm holding on to that. But today I could already feel creeping in kind of a like, oh, if I would have contacted that person, and if I would have done one more
the moving of the bar. Yeah.
Yeah. Yesterday, and I keep being like, no. That's all that you can do that all day long, but we're not going to do that. We're going to be in the love. And it's like, I literally have to like build this new muscle of, instead of just taking inventory of all the things that, could have been better and bigger and whatever, just like really being that this is now, like the ripple effect. Like if I die tomorrow, something happened that was totally aligned with my heart and my reason for being alive.
Realized.
And it's interesting how strong the critic and I think we do it in our relationships all the time too. Just, I use this analogy because my husband's a builder and a gardener, and I use this analogy with people. It's like, if I was just waiting for poetry all day and that was how I wanted like love to be shown, then I wouldn't feel it, because I would be like, where's the poems? But instead I have, shelving and flowers and food, like, and I have to see that the love is there. So wow. But, so I'm just that piece of like really, how you said it, of like living in the reality that you already have achieved.
Yeah.
So much, and just like you are like being here now, all the cliche things. It's hard to find the words because they sound so cliche.
Yeah.
But it's true. I'm like right there. I'm like, the volume is turned up so much on, yes, okay, I can already start thinking about next year. That's great. But like, also don't skip over that's like, something happened, and, letting the energy come in instead of just I have to do and put out.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when I met you guys, I was talking about resource planning versus vision-based planning. So resource is like you look at everything you have and you try to cobble it together using your mind, right? And vision-based planning is getting in touch with emotion. You use your mind to get clear on what those emotions are, and then you drive yourself forward, or you invite yourself from the past to come forward. And what I love what you're talking about, because I talk about embodiment. Like we get clear on the vision, but then we have to embody it on a daily basis. And what does that mean? It's like, yeah, we can use the mind to connect it to action, but you've taken the action, right? You did the actions. The actions are happening. You're still doing the actions. We did the mental piece, but then the feeling piece falls off by the wayside because it's easier to stay with our checklist every day than it is to open to the vulnerable space of feeling. And that's where I think the work is like, can we feel successful in whatever way that means for you? So maybe for you, success means content. Maybe for you, success means loved and, you know, or all of these things at once, and joyful and expansive and connected and all of the things that clearly you're expressing because we can pick them up from you. But then we have to feel it. We have to stop and breathe and let the body be like, oh, I got bigger, you know?
I love it. I'm so glad, Sarah, too, that you mentioned the forward looking as well. Because I know, well, from my corporate days in particular, it was always the out breath and the looking back that people often didn't give as much attention to as you want to, like really being willing to sit and reflect and see what worked and see what didn't work and see what you wanted to shift and change. But then as a strategist, my propensity is way too often to jump forward to, it's okay, whatever happened, whatever. But next year, and here you are 365 days out from next year, and it would be so easy to already go there. And so it's a perfect illustration, Sarah, of the world that Alexis blends, which is why the mindfulness sits right here in the now, creating the embodiment of the beautiful out-breath of all that was and all that we get to actually let into our hearts and our story and our being, while honoring knowing what's coming and bringing all of that forward towards the vision and where we're headed.
Well, I love it. Do you know Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist teacher? I might have mangled that name, but he was asked about how they plan at his monastery. And they said, oh, well, we have a day for planning. And I think in my mind, I was like, a day for what do you mean? What are you doing at the other times when you're sitting around? Like, are you not planning? But they do. They have like, this is planning time. And so the rest of the time, maybe they jot a note of something to think about at planning time, but they don't actually go down that chain of future thinking or of past reflection and analysis. Like, it must be a lot of work. It's something that I haven't embodied yet myself, but I love the idea of it. Like, oh, there's time for planning and there's time for being.
Well, and to use your beautiful imagery of the thread and the pearls, I mean, the idea of not engaging in the retrospective or the visioning in every moment means you're actually getting to journey that soul purpose thread and embody it in a different way. I'm constantly thinking about what's the next beat I'm stringing on this thing. I know what it is. Or I'm constantly looking back on what a neat co-creation of my own action, but also divine intervention that resulted in all that has been strung already. I love the idea that he's kind of separating the distance between those pearls and actually journeying the thread a little bit more.
Yeah. I love that phrase, journeying the thread. I'm going to write that down.
I love that word, journey, too. How about you, Lynn? Lynn, would you be willing to share how this is landing for you and what it brings up? Unmute you. Have you two met before?
No.
I don't think so, no.
Maybe, Lynn, you can tell Alexis a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, I totally resonated, Alexis, when you said, it's like, how do you put it in a 1 minute, 1 minute introduction, right? How do you put it all in? I basically support families, like maternal health and pediatrics. So simplicity is sort of like my thread, how to sort of simplify amidst the chaos of, so like families dealing with, lots of different health issues and all that sort of crisis all at once, whether it's with their child or a spouse or themselves. And really goes a lot deeper, right? It's like a lot of the similar stuff of sort of like becoming conscious and sort of how, kids can be a reflection. And I'm just feel like I'm learning stuff, but and I'm a doula and all that kind of stuff. But I've been living the last year just kind of surrendering and being and fulfilling other dreams, like traveling.
You have been journeying the thread. You have simply been allowing. Yeah.
So it's just been fun to listen to you guys talk. Yeah.
Thank you, Lynn. I appreciate you popping in.
Yeah.
Well, Alexis, if you were to kind of based on where you sit in the world and that overlay of that, how to look at a big complex picture, whether it's Afghanistan or our individual soul alignment or fulfillment. Based on where you sit and what you see as common threads, what are kind of the key tips that you would offer to modern mystics finding their way to this call to help them, journey the thread, identify the pearls that they want to string, and really move in that direction of their own definition of success?
Yeah, thank you. I love that. So I'll give it through another image. Because so many of us are in business and we're focused on that right livelihood. One of the images I really like is standing at the end of a stepstone path and holding a lantern. And that lantern is the message that you're here to share. And for me, that message is attached, or the work that I do, that message is attached to your soul's purpose and the specific ways that people might be struggling with that emotional spectrum that we talked about before. And so that light is, here's what's possible. Here's my ideal vision. Here's what my soul is trying to create in this life and the issue areas that I can work on. And so the more that we hold that space for ourselves by acknowledging the areas that we're a hot mess in, because that's the shadow side, right? But also acknowledging the gifts that gives us to be really expertly on the light side, then we shine that light brighter and brighter. And then when people are coming into our business, they're not even on the path. They're milling about in the grass. And we shine the light on the first step. And that first step is saying, I see you. I see the challenge you're having, because I know how the symptoms of this show up, right? The next step, maybe we take them a little bit deeper. And then as they get closer to the lantern, we're saying, this is the deeper emotional issue that was causing all of those symptoms in your life, in your business, in your relationships, in your family. Like, let's get to the core of that. And even if we never articulate it directly in that way, that's what we're moving through. That's what we're showing up as. And so a lot of people think, great, well, that means I need to plan out all of my stepping stones. Like, let me go outside of myself and work on all these business pieces. But the business is the bridge that allows you to meet other people. But you still have to stand with your lantern, right? The lantern shining is what gets people to look over, not you walking over the bridge or walking down the path and being like, hey, did you see me? I'm over here, right? So that it's a conceptual shift. It's a functional shift. It's a conceptual shift to take your focus off of working your business out here and working yourself and allowing your business to flow from you. And it's a painful shift. It's a scary shift. I just walked into a dark hallway. I'm sure there's a light at the end, but that door just slammed shift. It's all of those things at once. And it's also the shift that says, did I just ruin things because I'm deciding that that's less important than me? But that's the power of it, right? Because you're the thread that's going through all the beads. You're not the beads, you're the thread. Yeah. So the more you hold that thread, like turn that thread into gold, right? Like, yeah, braid that thread up. So shining that light and then allowing the business to be the bridge, to be the stepping stones. And there's a great quote that was shared with me by Kat Laterzo that said, people will pay a lot to learn from you, and people will pay even more to be near you, but people will do anything to be you if you're in that space of integrity
and shining your light. Well, yeah. And I mean, just to add another layer of mystic language on it, that's what you just described, the distinction between the stepping stone path and holding the lantern and the business, which is really just the bridge, is this shift from traditional sales-based and potentially fear-based marketing versus resonance, where you're actually creating the vibration that is attracting to you. And it's interesting how the headspace gets so quickly activated on that bridge, what I'm supposed to be doing, what I'm not supposed to be doing. But the headspace falls away when we're standing holding our lantern. That's where we are being. Right. And so when in doubt, I love returning to this image that Alexis brought forward of reconnect to your lantern, reconnect to trusting the path that you're on, maybe releasing the idea that you have to construct the stepping stones more than allow. And also the awareness that your business is the bridge to the connections and the prism, as we call it, of who you'll meet and who you'll get to dance with and who you'll have the conversations with and who will bring forth those next pearls on the thread.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an outlet. It's an outlet, not the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are right at an hour here. I noticed, Fran, you just came on camera, so I'm guessing you might want to say something to Alexis here. Can I unmute you for just a moment? Here we go. Yeah, Fran, welcome.
I feel that there's an unfoldment because there's an unfoldment. It's just unfolding for me.
Mm-hmm.
My mind many times was going to say to me, wait a minute, you know, here's your checklist. And then all of a sudden things just shift and flip. I feel connected to the flow. And I don't know if you can see yourself, but there's this lantern of light that's over you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you did that on purpose. Mine's kind of coming in from the side.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this pile of life behind me that I love all of it. And I'm recognizing I've had my own sense of what I call distractions. And then I'm realizing they're just a part of my fabric of how I'm digesting like all of the hearts of me.
Mm-hmm.
I just came from Toastmasters and teaching. And I have this recognition in this necklace that who knows where these hearts come from.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I had this strong feeling there's 1,200 people that want my product and I should be already ready, delivering it to them, and it should be in its 3rd edition. And I drive myself nuts. I don't want to do that. And I have had this strong feeling towards you, Lindsay. I don't know why. I don't know where. I spent the weekend in a kiva, so to speak, with 30 women led by native Choctaw. And I felt you, first of all, and I felt the whole tribe of Lindsay's friends. And I recognized what we did was looked at ourselves and looked at our mothers and their mothers and all of the mothers and the mother. And I recognized that my business is the mother's business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm healing my lovely mother, and all of this idea of flow, that's where I came in on this. It just comes into my breath, and my breath is soft and beautiful and alive and rich, and I get it. I mean, I don't know how many more I'll get. I'm glad that I'm here, and I'm confused a little bit, and I'm willing to let the flow unveil sort of my spontaneous, I was not really combustion, but spontaneous anchor to all of the mystic quality. And I've known that since I was really young. I mean, I feel like I've been looking and asking for this since I was 9 or 10, when the girls came out to the yard where we had recess, and we elevated people. We did it with 2 fingers. We did
Mystic games, the games Mystic plays, light as a feather, stiff as a board.
I was 50 pounds, and I was done. It was a lot. I spent a lot of time 3 feet in the air, just held by people's fingers.
Fran,
and that wasn't just by accident. Anyway, thank you for letting me have that.
Yeah, no, I just want to offer one thing back too. I mean, we weave in the realm of no coincidences, and here Alexis has been using this beautiful imagery of this thread and the pearls or whatever it is that we string on them, and then you have this necklace that comes on camera. And I just want to say, so often we want it to be the simple one thread with the beautiful beads, and it all makes up. And often the way we experience it in the moment is a lot more like this: many different threads, and how do they fit together, and are they part of a cord as a whole, and all the ways in which the hearts show up, internal and external to that. So no coincidences. You brought that beautiful necklace as a permission giver to us, you performance artist, you, our circus performer. But Alexis, I want to give you a chance to offer any reflections as well. And then will you also tell us where people can find you online and the best place to follow you and get on your list and all of that?
Sure. Thank you. Yes. Thank you all for sharing where you are and a little bit of your stories, and for giving me this beautiful new languaging, which I love. Every time I talk to you, Lindsay, I love it, because I just feel like I have vocabulary to put my head around concepts that.
Oh, and vice versa. So grateful.
Oh, thank you. So I'm at alexisPierce.com, and my community is called the Free and the Brave. So I used to work for the government, so that has those patriotic undertones. But what it's really about is that because inner freedom matters so much to me. So inner peace, inner freedom, they're the same sort of thing. But this moment of alignment, or I love that realization that you were talking about, is I'll use the word freedom for that. And so it's a brave path, right? Like it takes courage to walk this path because it's not pretty all the time. And so it's about the brave souls who are on that path to inner freedom. And so if you find me on Twitter and Facebook and all that, it's under the Free and the Brave, or Free and Brave somehow. So
beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. But thank you so much for this conversation and for allowing me to have a sneak peek into your world and the work that you guys are boldly bringing into our world.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for your time. We were just on vacation this last 10 days, and we were watching, my girls and I, that new Cinderella movie yesterday. And the running thread through that is to have courage and be kind. And I feel like your Free and the Brave really brings those together for me. So I'm going to, this is an interview for them. Have courage and be kind. So yes, thank you so much for joining us. I do want to encourage everyone to follow Alexis. Like you saw, there's just this beautiful juxtaposition of really practical, tactical, real smarts and innovation and strategic guidance with a deep awareness of the purpose and the meaning and the mindfulness that allows us to be in the moment to actually embody those things. So anyway, thank you again all so much for joining us. Alexis, thank you. And I will look forward to seeing you all online. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye, everyone. Bye, Fran. Much love.